Alright, back on the F350, and I say that, I never actually stopped working on it. It's just, we did enough work to make another full, complete video. Put it this way, my wife loves doing puzzles and wants me to help her work on puzzles in the house, and I'm like, no, I've got a giant puzzle in the shop, and I don't have the lid to show me exactly what I'm doing, and I know I'm missing about 87 pieces in the end. Good news is, we got about 40 of those figured out. We're in final assembly on a pile of stuff. Having my heavy duty background, we're able to incorporate a lot of the heavy duty stuff into this, like the whole air ride system. We added bags to the front and back, incorporating the compressor and the blow off, everything involved underneath with that, and so much more. You're gonna wanna watch this, here we go. Okay, got the transmission cooler mounted. We also have a compressor on this thing. We're gonna finish it up. A couple loose ends that need to be taken care of, and then we're bolting it down for the very last time on the frame. We're gonna do the rod support. So, we'll put that on, put the radiator back on with the new fan and see if it all fits. Intake turned out beautiful. Okay, so on our F350, we did add a pile of weight to the front. I'm going to move the batteries to the back with just a plug probably under the hood where I can jump it if I need to. We still have a lot of weight in the front, so definitely replacing the shocks. If you watch Drew Mann's driveway, he added 2 leaf springs to the front to stiffen up the ride. But we're gonna go with airbags so we can adjust it, just add more air if we want a little stiffer or if we think it's riding too sluggish, or take it away because it's not sagging near as much as I thought it would. And because we're putting bags in the front, we're putting bags in the back. The back bags showed up, the front ones did not, so we'll stall those before we get too far. We've got our onboard air anyway, so it only makes sense. So, really nice kit. This lip goes towards the inside. Just your airbag sits on top. And then these slide underneath this top spring. With that going down. There's some bolts to tie it down. And a bracket to sit on top. All I have to do is drill the holes to go through there. And when you're done, just like Michael Stewart, it'll look something like this. So, very nicely put on. Super simple system. Now, they have an air line that goes to a little valve for an air chuck, and then you can put that on the bumper and you can add air, take away air, whatever you want. We're probably gonna use little solenoids to open and close. So we're gonna tee them together, put a solenoid in between the tank and the bags to add air, and then the second bag will still tee off and just put one of those valves down to dump the air so we can subtract air or add air from inside the cab with a pressure gauge just to monitor what we're doing. So we're going a little bit extreme, but honestly you could put this together in your garage for about 2 hours, no issues. Okay. Got a few more fittings, got my lines sort of ran, and then I bought the wrong fitting there. So that's gonna run up into the cab. We'll put these valve bodies in the cab. We'll exhaust them out of the cab, but then at least they'll stay out of the weather. And just put them underneath the seat. Here we go. Okay, so I have 2 of these brackets that look exactly the same, which doesn't make any sense because the instructions show it hooking around the spring and then a plate underneath, and then this just sits loose, I guess. I don't understand because I can't, because of the sway bars in the way, so I can't get my plate underneath, and because of that bracket I can't even hook it around the spring. So it'll work really nice like this, and I can put my bracket under here, and maybe I'll just cut this hook off and weld it on the top here and have it hook right over the top. To me that makes sense. Then I can fit everything, and then I can straddle my bracket without having to move my brakes. So that's what I'm gonna do. Screw the instructions. Sometimes I don't know if this is aftermarket, this big sway bar or not. Let me know in the comments. I'm not a Ford guru. I've never seen a stock Ford. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut this off, weld it so it hooks over the top. It can't slide back because it'll have the pressure on the spring on there, and then it's kind of stuck on the spring. So welder and torches, here we go. Okay, still hot. Now it hooks over the top, jams up against the bottom, can't go that way, can't go that way, and lined up in the center with my hole. Splashing paint on there. I cut 2 of everything right at once, so I'm good to do the other side. Bam. Some people come up with problems, some people come up with solutions. Here we go. I thought, well, I might as well do the brakes while we're at it. I think he had the brakes hooked up wrong, because the front, correct me if I'm wrong guys, the fronts need to go into this port, the backs need to go into this port. This is your first thing, like this is your primary, this is your secondary. So he had the other way, which means this could be why the brakes sucked. The fittings didn't fit anyway, but I'm gonna put the front brakes into this port, which is closest to the flange, which is your primary, and the rear brakes, which don't do as much braking because it doesn't have a freaking 1,500 pound engine on top. That goes into this one. So I'll flare those, pop those on, and we'll get into the airbags. You guys know how to flare lines and do brakes, so I'm just gonna skip this. This is a long video, but that's gonna be done too. Basically, it's just a giant checklist of everything that I've got done. I'm feeling very, very good about this. Okay, with the lines on, just left them loose, filled up the reservoir until it started dripping. Your fluid here, the lines should technically be full because I just took the other master off. So I put the brake pedal on the other day because I found it and I painted it. So right now, I've got brakes. I didn't even bleed them. Nice. So I gotta put the pin in there yet, but yeah. So right now the only thing that works on the truck is the brakes, but that took me all of 20 minutes because somebody had the foresight to weld in an entire firewall and thereby adding hydroboost in 20 minutes. That's awesome. One more thing off the list. Sweet, I'm so happy about that. I got brakes. So this is the transfer case. I had this one rebuilt. It was a lot more expensive than I thought it should be. But regardless, it is what it is, I guess. So we got the stiffener for it. So this bolts the transmission. This bolts the 2 bolts on here. So that is the weak point, so they tell me. So now I just gotta paint them because they were gonna paint this silver, engine's yellow, transmission's red, and this is orange. That's not gonna work. So we'll tape this off, we'll scuff this down, splash that all, make it all red. I'm just sanding that down. Last little bit, splash some paint on it, and be ready to install in the morning. Here we go. All right, so if you guys haven't been up to date with the project, this was the original transmission that came behind the Cat. It was in the school bus. It is an Allison 2000, which is not very desirable because it doesn't have overdrive and it's 2-wheel drive with no parking crawl. But we had Excalibur transmission rebuild it. Now it's a 5-speed with overdrive, completely rebuilt, new torque converter, and they replaced the tailstock off of a 1000 to allow for the transfer case that would be behind a Duramax. So we had that transfer case rebuilt, we've got everything brand new, and we added an extra brace on the top. Only one thing left to do, and that is to drive back to Niagara Drive Line. It's a ways away, so we'll line that up with another trip, but we need to put a slip yoke in our front drive shaft. As you guys mentioned, our transfer case was meant for an IFS, which means that the transfer case and the front diff don't move, and you don't need that drive shaft to change length. If we were to leave it alone, as you guys suggested, it would take out that transfer case. So we will be installing a slip yoke, and we are back to a Bluetooth front drive shaft. Here we go. Okay, so back on the F350. Last time I cut this strip off to make room for the radiator. So I welded that in, and then I welded the top piece in and braced it all in there. So it's nice and sturdy now. I can put the radiator back in it again. One last test fit and make sure that everything's okay. Then I'll try and run, well, I won't try, I will take the piece that I cut off here and weld it down to the end, make sure I don't hit anything. Now I got room for everything. And basically one last test fit, and then we'll weld everything solid. Weld everything tight in here yet. That was upside down. We'll fill that in with weld nice. That brings everything nice and stiff right in this corner here. And then we'll notch where I have to put the intercooler piping. So here we go. I guess it would help if I put it in the right side up. That doesn't fit very good at all. Getting too excited. Okay, Vince killing it with some really nice bracketry there. We'll stick a rubber in between, solidify those. And we got a nice bracket on the bottom here. We can still take the cooler out and put the same thing, rubber in the bottom there. My kitty, cat under the truck, cat in the truck. And now just make a little bracket that will hold that in place. And here's my bracket. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Piece of angle iron, a piece of steel. Nice. And we're gonna do the rod support. A couple, just where I cut the holes there, too much of a space. So cut a 4-inch hole into places. Just gonna weld that in. This is actually just off the hood, off the old truck. It's already painted. I like that steel. It's already protected. So one for each side. We'll take everything apart, weld everything up solid, paint it, and then final assembly on the front. Here we go. Okay, there's the radiator support all done. I welded in a flange nut. I just drilled a hole and stuck the nut in there with the flange sticking out and welded that on. So that'll hold the top of the air-to-air up against the top there. These are the brackets for the AC condenser. This is the mount for the bottom of the intercooler. So there's a rubber that slides into the bracket. It's off a Power Stroke, so I machined a puck to slide inside, and then I just welded a nut on the bottom. We'll drill a hole straight into the puck, and then just stick a bolt into that hole, and that'll keep that rubber from sliding, and then it won't be able to go back and forth. These are the supports for the radiator. I'll make a piece that bolts to the bottom. But I don't have that yet. I'm gonna put the bumper and everything on and just see how all that fits. But I'm just gonna paint it matte black because then I can change it later if I want. I just sanded it down. I welded in plates where there was a hole before. This is where the intercooler piping goes. We'll put a gasket in there so it slides through nice and looks nice and neat. I had to make room for, this actually took quite a bit of work. It's nice and strong now, but I did have to notch that down. I welded that plate in there. That makes room for the radiator. Can't go any bigger whatsoever. Sanded everything down. So now I'll just splash some paint on it. Should be dry in the morning. That can be final install. Okay, so while that's drying, we got one other issue, and that is this fan from Flex-A-Lite. Now, fantastic fan, moves a ton of air, but you can see it sticks out quite a bit. If you look at my fist, it's up to my 3rd finger there. So that fan is okay. I had to modify that. I'll get Vince to just weld a little brace across to strengthen that. But that fan hits directly into the balancer. So to fix that, even though I don't want to, I got this much lower profile fan from Grassroots, and what I'm gonna do is just make the housing for it sit on the inside, and then bolt the fan to here because it's just a touch smaller than the circle and it'll sit fairly flush. We're just customizing all the custom parts. That's typical DEBOSS. Here we go. Okay, so this is what I did. Originally the fan was on this side of the housing. I put it on the back side, then I cut the edges off and just folded them over so that they're 3/4 so it'll still seal really good, and then cut 2 ends that butt up to here. So when I'm done, it'll look like that. Now if you look, that's a lot more narrow than the other one. The back side doesn't even look that bad either. Bolt that in place. That's how that looks. Nice. I can shim it back. Shim it back another 3/4 inch if I want, and then it's pretty well flush, but I don't want it touching the fins. So I've got about a 3/4 inch to an inch left to go yet before I hit it. So there we go. Okay, that turned out really good. Happy with that. The only thing I didn't think about is I had Vince weld these brackets on for mounting all the coolers, but I didn't actually check if it fit between all of the plastics that hold the headlights and stuff. So that's why we painted black, because we can cut it and modify it if we have to. For the radiator supports, I just took the bushings that I didn't use on my Silverado for the springs and machined them down in the lathe so that they fit nice and snug in there, because that was the right size hole for the mount on the radiator. And now that's nice and protected. So we'll put that on and put the radiator back on with the new fan and see if it all fits. And then we're good. Here we go. With aluminum, it's still fairly heavy. I think it's right there. So it'll probably self-clearance. Oh, wait, I'm not in the holder, see that? Oh, that holder's empty. Hold on. I think I've got like a 1/4 inch to spare. I wasn't in the holder down below. I see light between there, but I probably, I gotta put a fender on just to make sure that the size is right, but I'll probably bring that in. I'll put some spacers underneath there yet. If I put a thick gasket all the way around, that'll bring that in. Loctite those bolts, that'll be perfect. My fill tube worked out really good. That's not hitting anything. So that clears the fan with lots of room to spare. If anything, then the fan would hit that first, or the housing. So I can weld that solid. We're in good shape. Nice. And that's with the holes being in the middle here yet. I can probably bring it out a hair on the bottom and tilt the top in. The position of that isn't as crucial. So sweet, and that looks really, really nice. Here we go. Okay, so that was a touch close for this to be out. Now the fan was on the top here. I just took it and put it on the bottom. So I just unscrewed it and moved it so that it was on the inside. And then I took all bolts and stuck it through. Then I Loctited these, and then I took a hammer and a dolly and smashed over the top of the threads. So I cut the threads just like 2 threads up, and then I just smashed the threads so that these can't ever come undone. Don't need this running and then falling into the fan, which kind of sucks. For this, I just got some little aluminum, brand new from Princess Auto. I'll just get Vince to weld the aluminum right to the face. You bend it nicely. He's coming tomorrow. And for the fan control, it's pretty slick. It comes with this controller. I had to cut the other fan off. It's already pre-wired, but I'm just gonna, so you just have positive coming out. These are your negatives on a breaker. You put a temperature probe right in the radiator. You just stick it in the fins and put that into these 2 plugs, give it power and key power and ground. And then you can use this little dial right here to set the fans to come on whenever you want. Leaves all the electronics out of it. It's all completely Flex-A-Lite, really cool setup. So we can use one of these on the transmission controller as well. if we want, and you don't have to guess when the fan is coming on. If it gets too hot, turn it on earlier. If you like it running a little hotter, you can turn the fan on whenever you like. Now this fits really nice. Weld this up, hardwire the fan in, and then we're all set. We can drop this in. I'm gonna wait for Vince to come in the morning, but actually I'm pretty happy how that all turned out. That looks pretty slick, actually. That's on the inside, and won't affect any air because you're pulling it. The fan is still an inch away from the radiator, so there'll be lots of movement. But if it's anything like the Cummins, I doubt these fans will even come on unless we are stuck in traffic. So here we go.
Okay, so I had Vince weld the support that'll go around the balancer, and I got the fan indented in there. That looks pretty sweet. Got it wired in, and just zip tie the cable back on, and then some power, some grounds, some key power, and she's all set. Here we go.
Vince welded up the fill tube. Looks beautiful. A little brace on there to support it. Gloss black. I already painted the engine yellow, so we try and match the yellow. Kind of paint. So any extras, anything added on afterwards, it's just black. It's just science. Wonderful. Gotta get tacky. Put a second coat on there. So this is the Be Quiet insulation. It's sticky on the one side, but it also works really good as like an insulator between things. So we'll put the factory edge up, and then we'll trim the bottom. It won't be squeaking or rubbing, and it adds a nice degree of vibration dampener between the mating surfaces. It's actually sitting on these mounts. I just made a mark. I'll drill that hole, shove a bolt in there, and that'll keep it from going left to right and side to side. Drilled the hole pretty small, so it should be a nice tight fit. Okay, so that turned out really nice. That fits the way it's supposed to. Now this evaporator, we're gonna replace it with a new one, just test fitting with the old one. But we'll throw the fenders back on it again, put the grill on, and see if the front end still fits. There we go. Alright, so this is the old intake. I just cut the flange off the original intake. There's some ports for sensors and that. I had Vince weld this, but he wasn't very happy with this. It's very difficult because this is super tinny. This is super thick and old and gross. And then I had him weld extra plate on here to drill and tap for extra sensors. I thought, you know what, good practice, but let's do it again. So we're getting the boys at Oshkosh to start us off on the right foot. So we just sent them the measurements, and they cut the flange, and the flange, the boys just do amazing. So look at that. Each hole lines up perfect. Unbelievable. Looks beautiful. So what we're gonna do is start. I got some new tin for Vince. That's brand new, even though it looks old. And then we got this, which is the bottom of the grid heater. This will get welded onto the intake kind of like this, and then the grid heater will drill and tap these holes. We just got them to drill small holes so that we could center the holes. And then this is the round circle that we can weld the intake flange to. Vince will be happy with that. and then we're all set. So, first things first, we'll bolt this onto the side of the head. Start grabbing some cardboard, seeing exactly, I think it's gonna end up somewhere around here, maybe like that. Cut the cardboard. It's gonna be a little bit more boxy this time, which will fit the engine nicer. It'll still taper down at the back and then curl around on the back. And then it's gotta kind of curl around the sensor on the injection, on the HUI pump. So, here we go. Okay, so that's where I want it. This is roughly where piping's gonna go. Nice and tight around here, still underneath the wheel well. We're gonna go up as soon as we can, while avoiding that. Try to make it up as you go. And then we lay that on top, cut it out, trace it onto the aluminum. We're golden. So simple. Okay, that's quickly how it looks. Just 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, and then I gotta make one in the morning there yet. When we pull that grid heater off, lots of room to weld that. So we'll get Vince. Vince couldn't make it out tonight, so he's coming back in the morning to weld that. I'm gonna put a plate on the inside rather than on the outside, right here. And that will be extra room for me to drill my 3 fittings in there. Lots of meat, this is nice and thick. It'll be almost a 1/2 inch thick then. So, yeah, very exciting. Looks much better than that hunk of crap. But try, doesn't work, try again. No harm in that. All the air-to-air stuff is done. Nice. Okay, so intake turned out beautiful. Now we're gonna just figure out where the mounts are gonna go for the transmission dipstick and the engine dipstick. So I made the engine dipstick, like I said before, a couple good ideas about using copper in between, but the airline I think is gonna work. I'm gonna put a little bit of silicone in there to hold it in place and seal it, and then go to V&R and just crimp this so that'll hold it in place. If it doesn't work, I can always pull it out and go a little bit shorter. It gives me a little bit of adjustment where to put it. Basically, I just figured out where the dipstick is, how much has to be sticking out, and if it is bottomed in there, then we're good. Got a nice mount on here already. That will go on this one and this one. We're gonna make this hose first, and then I'll get Vince to weld those on. So here we go.
So 715. We were at 750.
Yeah.
So 880. Yeah, sure.
I don't think you can over crimp it.
I don't think so either.
No, just don't worry.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that looks good.
That looks pretty good,
Yeah,
actually.
look at that. Beautiful lines on there. Oh. I'm happy with that. To that end, we're golden. Just let me pop the dipstick in and make sure that
Yeah, it clears through there.
the right thing, and we're all set.
Yeah,
Awesome.
boom.
Okay, I got the coolant line going out of the compressor back into the head, and that loops around. Right here is just where I welded that plate for us to tap the sensors in. So I'll put the inlet for the air for the compressor into the manifold, which is where it was stock, and then the sensor for the intake air temperature. So those will be side by side, and those fit right here. I've got everything pretty well buttoned up underneath here. We've got a new Borgeson steering shaft, so that goes to our steering column. So it's got the 93 collar on the steering box, and then it's got the 2010 coupler for the steering shaft itself. Collapsible, solid. We love Borgeson's products, so that's awesome. I gotta get my power steering lines yet, but I'm gonna throw the manifold back on again for now. I need an M18 by 1.5 tap for this sensor, and that's coming off Amazon. Nobody in town has one. I can't paint the manifold until that's done. I got a upper rad hose. I couldn't find one with an 1 7/8, or sorry, 1 3/4, 1 7/8 on that end. This is off a 6.7 Cummins. It comes over, goes up, and goes down a little bit. So I just ordered another one, and I can get the 90 here and just put a coupler in the middle. Unfortunately, that it is what it is. I've got the lower rad hoses figured out. That was just 1 7/8 to 2 inch. That was easier. With a couple pieces, so it's just whatever I had laying around. I think what I'm gonna do is get Lyles to bend up a piece of exhaust that follows the contour once I have it all tight, and then just have a coupler on the one end and on the other. Can't have the bottom collapsing. So I'm gonna put the manifold back on again and just finish up this intake pipe. I got Vince to weld these together, just TIG them, but put that foaming degreaser from WD-40 in there. That's perfect, just to coat everything on the inside. Clean that up nice. We'll shove a rag through there, a little bit of brake clean, and then it's brand new, ready to go. Got to run to Vince's work and get him to weld these two little tabs on here, and that'll hold the transmission dipstick and the engine oil dipstick. Hopefully that still looks good. Here we go. Bouncing back and forth. We got a lot done. Waiting for my tap for this thing so I can put the sensor in the bottom. I had Vince weld that fitting right there. That will feed this one. So filtered air under pressure is going to come into the compressor. And that's good. I almost got to put a tap there. If this compressor ever breaks, then or blows apart, it'll take all my boost. But we'll worry about that later. Hopefully you guys saw lots of work done and get motivated to work on your own stuff. Next episode we'll be installing the complete performance headlights and getting into some wiring and the HVAC stuff, the dash. So yeah, I don't even really know what the next episode looks like because I'm going to work on that shiny cab over behind me. I gotta get that on there and get that trailer back to the neighbor because that took a while. So lots of stuff happening. Remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich. Get out there and work on it. Here we go.